Hi boys and girls, it's Mrs. Lebrecq here. I'm very excited to be sharing a book with you today. Our skill this week that we're going to be focusing on is called point of view. And when we talk about point of view for a story, we're thinking about who is telling the story. Sometimes we have a narrator that tells the story and they describe what's going on in the book, telling about the characters and what they're doing. Sometimes we have what's called a first person point of view, where I myself would be telling the story, and I might write like a diary entry and tell about things I did. We're going to look at the book today and just enjoy reading and thinking about what's happening in it, and then afterwards we'll talk a little bit more about the different points of view we saw for each of the characters. So the book is called Voices in the Park. And it's kind of divided into 4 chapters, and the first chapter is called First Voice. It was time to take Victoria, our pedigree Labrador, and Charles, our son, for a walk. And remember, when we're reading, pictures tell the story just as much as the words. So I like to really look at the pictures. They're great. This book is a nice big book with bright, colorful pictures. And yes, it is a monkey who was our mom character walking the dog, and the son is kind of tucked behind her, and they seem to have a really lovely big house. When we arrived at the park, I let Victoria off her leash. Immediately, some scruffy mongrel appeared and started bothering her. I shooed it off, but the horrible thing chased her all over the park. I ordered it to go away, but it took no notice of me whatsoever. "Sit," I said to Charles. "Here." And so if we can look in the back, we can see the 2 dogs are running. One of them is their dog Victoria. And certainly look at Mom's face, and look at Charles the son and how they're sitting on the bench. I was just planning what we should have to eat that evening when I saw Charles had disappeared. Oh dear, where had he gone? You get some frightful types in the park these days. I called his name for what seemed like ages. We can certainly see how concerned and scared she is by the way she's calling, wondering where her son is. And we can see the dogs in the background. Then I saw him talking to a very rough-looking child. "Charles, come here at once," I said. "And come here, please, Victoria." We walked home in silence. So if we think about this first voice in our story with the mom, we want to think about, well, what kind of day at the park was she having? And it seemed like she was very grumpy and very annoyed. She didn't like that other dog coming up near her dog. She didn't like her son playing with what looks like just a normal little girl way in the background. Just a little girl with a striped shirt, cute little ponytail. As she was sitting there with her son, they weren't talking. She had a very strange look on her face with her eyes closed, trying to think about what to do for dinner that night. Just kind of ordered the son around, telling him to sit. So we're going to kind of keep that in mind, and we're going to look at the next person who comes to the park here, another voice. This is the second voice. I needed to get out of the house, so me and Smudge took the dog to the park. And so if you look here, this looks very different than the house we saw Charles live in. You can see there's a couple of paintings down here at the bottom, and there's a man dressed with a Santa hat that says, "Wife and millions of kids to support," and he's looking for some money. There's garbage in the street. We see kind of an apartment complex in the background, and we can see them walking their dog to the park. He loves it there. I wish I had half of the energy he's got. And I like, if you can see, the author kind of shows a little bit of a blur as the dogs are running so quickly through the woods here. I settled on a bench and looked through a paper for a job. I know it's a waste of time, but you've got to have some hope, haven't you? Then it was time to go. Smudge cheered me up. She chattered happily to me all the way home. And now when we look on their trip home, the picture is a bit different. There's colors. Look at the street lamp. Looks like a flower. Here we have them in here. The man isn't begging for any money. He's kind of dancing in his Santa suit, and the two paintings are now kind of people dancing over here. And look, there's even what looks like Godzilla or King Kong standing over on the apartment bench. So what has changed? The neighborhood didn't change where he lives. But how did he feel when he left the house? He said he was fed up, so he took himself out to the park. So he definitely was not in a very good mood when he left. But he chatted happily with his daughter all the way home and got energy from watching his dog, and his outlook is different. He's feeling happy, and his surroundings certainly look a lot brighter and happier now, don't they? Now we have a third voice in our story. We have the son, Charles. I was at home on my own again. It's so boring. Then my mother said that it was time for our walk. There was a very friendly dog in the park, and Victoria was having a great time. I wish I was. So we can kind of see him standing there with the dogs off, having fun playing. Now it's funny, we have a hat on the lamppost, and the tree is like a hat, and so are the clouds in the sky. This illustrator definitely has some fun with their pictures, don't they? And even the hat on the shadow back here. Do you want to come on the slide? A voice asked. It was a girl. Unfortunately, but I went away anyway. She was great on the slide. She went really fast. I was amazed. And again, the two dogs you can see are running in the background. The two dogs raced around like old friends. The girl took off her coat and swung on the climbing bars, so I did the same. I am good at climbing trees, so I showed her how to do it. She told me her name was Smudge. A funny name, I know, but she's nice. Then my mother caught us talking together, and I had to go home. Maybe Smudge will be there next time. So if we think about Charles in the story, he's home alone all by himself and gets to take a walk each day to the park with the mom while she walks the dog. And it started off, he wasn't having a good time just sitting on a bench by himself, but it ended up really being a great day at the park because he got to make a new friend. And we have our last voice of the story, voice 4. Dad has been really fed up. So I was happy when he said we could take Albert to the park. Albert's always in such a hurry to be let off his leash. He went straight up to this nice dog and sniffed its backside. He always does that. Of course the other dog didn't mind, but the owner was really angry. That's silly. And we can see the dogs running in the background, and there is Charles's mother not happy with the dogs kind of meeting up at the park this way. I got talking to this boy. I thought he was kind of a wimp at first, but he's okay. We played on the seesaw and he didn't say much, but later on he was more friendly. We both burst out laughing when we saw Albert taking a swim. And then we all played on the bandstand, and I felt really, really happy. So our statue has lots of monkeys in swimsuits on it, and our dogs are going for a swim, and here they are playing on the bandstand. Charlie picked a flower and gave it to me, and then his mom called him and he had to go. He looked sad. When I got home, I put the flower in some water and made Dad a nice cup of cocoa. So I love this book. I like the illustrations. I like the different characters we get to meet. But this is a really great book because it was all about the same afternoon in a park. But each person had a different point of view or a different way of looking at how the day was going. And a lot of it depends on their mood and what they believed for that day of what was happening. So I have a chart to show you, and the chart will also be on the flip grid so you can take a look at it after. But we want to be thinking about our characters in the story. So if we think of our voices in the park, we want to think about Mom and what was her day like in the park. Well, it was not a good day at the park because a dog had bothered her dog, and she didn't want her child playing with the other children. And then we want to think, well, how was her point of view different from someone else's point of view in the story? She thought that the girl, who was voice 4, was very rough-looking and should not be playing with her son. But her son, who was voice 3, loved his time with his new friend. So they both were in the park looking at the same situation of this girl, but each of them saw it differently based on their point of view. Mom was a little bit snobby, where the boy was really looking for some company. And then if we think about the dad in the story, he was voice 2. He only went to the park to get out of his house. But seeing his dog so full of joy and energy really cheered him up. He thought his dog was having a good time with the other dog. He loved watching them race and play in the park. But the mom, voice 1, thought that his dog was a scruffy mongrel. She didn't want it near her dog. Again, her snobbiness is kind of showing. Then we had her son Charles. He was our third voice. He was bored at home, and he was so relieved to go to the park. He had fun with the new girl he met, and he thought the dogs played just like old friends. He was proud to show off his tree climbing skills and follow along with the girl. However, the girl thought maybe he was a wimp at first. And then we have our girl. She was our fourth voice. Her dad was fed up, so she was kind of glad to get him out of the house to the park. She thought the boy was a wimp, but she grew to like him, and he looked sad as he was leaving. She left the park happy, chatting with her father, but the boy left the park sad. He didn't want to leave his new friend. So if we're really thinking about point of view, an author's point of view might impact the way a story is told because everyone sees things differently. One person might describe an event totally opposite from another person because of their attitude or their beliefs or their values or their mood. So this week we're going to do some more activities that have to do with point of view. And we want to think about who's telling the story, how they're telling it, how they were feeling, so we can better understand what's happening in our story. And we also want to pay attention to who's telling the story. Is it a narrator looking in, or is it someone in the story, one of the characters that's talking? So the chart is included on your flip grid, so you can take a peek with that. I hope you enjoyed the story, and we'll see you tomorrow for another fun activity.